of Count on Us, Reasoning and Sense Making. We are here to assist you today with understanding word problems and working through word problems. I am so excited that you chose to take a little bit of time out of your day to join us. So grab yourself a pencil and a piece of paper. Get ready to explore decimals and fractions and number sense, multiplication and division. You ready? Come on, let's go do some math.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Count on Us, Reasoning and Problem Solving Grade 3. I'm Coach Young, and I am so excited that you are here with us. I hope everyone is having an amazing day. It's been a while since we've been together, but we are now back on air supporting 3rd through 5th grade math learning on Monday afternoons and 6th through 8th grade math learning on Wednesday afternoons. Both shows will air from 5 to 5:30 p.m., so make sure you tune in. Our show will focus on specific grade level standards and problem-solving strategies to develop you into successful mathematicians. So, let's get started. By the end of today's mini lesson, you will be able to say, I can represent a two-step word problem with models, pictures, and equations. Solving today's reasoning and problem-solving problem will be as easy as 1, 2, 3. Here are the steps we will follow as we solve today's problem. Step 1, read and understand the problem. Step 2, ask yourself, what do you know that will help you to solve the problem? And step 3, solve the problem by doing the math. For the first read, I will read the problem to you. Then we will discuss what the problem is about. Jennifer is going to the fair with 8 of her friends. She has 36 tickets left over from her last visit to the fair and buys 27 more tickets during this visit. She wants to give the same amount of tickets to each of her friends and herself. How many tickets did Jennifer and her friends each receive? So let's think about what this problem is about. After reading this problem, I imagine Jennifer is going to the fair with 8 of her friends, so there are 9 people in all. The last time she went to the fair, she had 36 tickets left over. This time she went to the fair, she bought 27 more tickets. She wants each of them to receive the same number of tickets, including herself. For the second read, I would like for you to read the problem along with me. Jennifer is going to the fair with 8 of her friends. She has 36 tickets left over from her last visit to the fair and buys 27 more tickets during this visit. She wants to give the same amount of tickets to each of her friends and herself. How many tickets did Jennifer and her friends each receive? Now I want you to think about what the quantities and units are in the problem. Quantities are the numbers and units are what's being counted. Sometimes the quantities and units jump right out at you, and sometimes they don't. In this problem, we see the number 8 represents Jennifer's friends. That stood right out. However, we must not forget that Jennifer represents a quantity of 1 because she is one person. The quantity of 36 represents the leftover tickets, and the quantity 27 represents the tickets bought. For the third read the problem to yourself one more time. Think about what's missing from this problem. It is always important that you understand what the problem is about, as well as understand the quantities and the units in the problem before rushing to try to answer the question. Now that we have done that, what questions can we ask ourselves about the problem? Here are a couple questions I came up with. How many tickets does she have? How many tickets will each friend receive? This is a visual of the entire problem. This is the way your problem will look virtually. You will be given a space to explain your work, and you will also be able to enter equations in the space using the equation editor located on the right side of your workspace. So, what do you know now? The question asks, how many tickets did Jennifer and her friends each receive? We do know that there are 9 people in total, including Jennifer, going to the fair. We know that Jennifer had 36 tickets left over from her last visit to the fair. We know that Jennifer buys 27 more tickets for the fair. And we know that Jennifer wants to give the same amount of tickets to each of her friends and herself. Let's figure out how many total tickets Jennifer has. We know that Jennifer had 36 tickets left over from her last visit to the fair, and that Jennifer buys 27 more tickets for the fair. That gives us an equation of 36 plus 27 equals an unknown number. When I do the math and add all of the tickets together, I get a total of 63 tickets. Jennifer has a total of 63 tickets. So how many tickets will each friend receive? We know that Jennifer has a total of 63 tickets, and that we can divide them equally amongst Jennifer and her 8 friends, which is a total of 9 people. As you solve this problem, it is important to label your work. Here we have Jennifer and her 8 friends listed, and we are giving each person 1 ticket at a time until we run out of the 63 total tickets that we have. Once we have handed out all of the tickets, we check to make sure everyone has an equal amount. Our model shows that each person, including Jennifer, will receive 7 tickets. That equation is represented as 63, the total amount of tickets, divided by 9, the total number of people, including Jennifer, equals 7, the total amount of tickets each person will receive. As you are working on your math problem online, remember that your screen will give you a work area where you can type in your response, including equations, using the equation editor. You may also see a drawing box to model your work in the space provided. Make sure to use that area to show all of the work you did to solve the problem. This allows anybody looking at your work to clearly see your understanding of the problem. Today, we read the problem for understanding, used what we knew, and solved a 2-step problem. What strategies did we use? We applied the 3-read strategy, we visualized the problem, and we drew a model to solve for our problem. Now, you can represent a 2-step word problem with models, pictures, and equations. That's it for 3rd grade today. The next segment will be for our 4th grade students. See you next time.
My name is Coach Sun, and I am so glad that you have joined us today. Fourth graders, by the end of today's lesson, you will be able to say, I can solve multi-step word problems with whole numbers and have whole number answers using the 4 operations. I can apply concepts and formulas for area and perimeter to solve problems. Today we are going to use the 3-read protocol, which helps us to problem solve. During the first read, we are going to think about, what is the situation about? During the second read, we will ask ourselves, what are the quantities in the situation? And for the third and final read, we will think about, what mathematical questions can we ask about the situation? So let's get started. Here we have a grade 4 task, and let's use the 3-read protocol to help us really understand what's being asked. So for the first read, I'm going to read it to you. And as I'm doing that, I want you to think about, what is this situation about? The figure shows the dimensions of a rectangular floor. The 2 openings represent doors. Each door is 3 feet wide. A contractor will buy baseboards to place around the entire floor, except for the doors. Each baseboard is 8 feet long and costs $11. Find the total cost of the baseboards the contractor will need to buy for the room. So what is this situation about? When I'm thinking about this situation, I know that we have a rectangular floor. There are some dimensions there, and there are 2 doors. And there is a contractor who wants to place baseboards around the floor, except for the space with the doors. And then there are baseboards and costs to the baseboards. Now it's time for the second read. So during the second read, we are going to think about what are the quantities in the situation. And I would love it if you could join me and read together if you would like to. The figure shows the dimensions of a rectangular floor. The 2 openings represent doors. Each door is 3 feet wide. A contractor will buy baseboards to place around the entire floor, except for the doors. Each baseboard is 8 feet long and costs $11. Find the total cost of the baseboards the contractor needs to buy for the room. So what quantities are in the situation? When we think about the quantities and the values, we also want to think about the units that they are in. So in this situation, we have 3 feet, 18 feet, 14 feet, 8 feet, and $11. So we're going to be using those quantities and thinking not only about the quantities themselves, but about the different units. And most of them are in feet. There is 1 unit that is in dollars. And now for the third read. What mathematical questions can we ask about the situation? Again, I'm going to read it to you. Feel free to join me or oral read with someone around you. The figure shows the dimensions of a rectangular floor. The 2 openings represent doors. Each door is 3 feet wide. A contractor will buy baseboards to place around the entire floor, except for the doors. Each baseboard is 8 feet long and costs $11. Find the total cost of the baseboards the contractor needs to buy for the room. So what mathematical questions can we ask about the situation? Well, one question I have is how long are the missing side lengths? So for the rectangular floor, it gives us 2 of the dimensions, the side lengths, but not the other 2. So I'm wondering, what are those missing side lengths? Another question I have is, what is the perimeter of the floor? Because I heard, and as we were reading, it talked about the contractor buying baseboards to place around the entire floor. Around tells me that we're going to find the distance around the floor, and when we find that, we are finding the perimeter. So I'm wondering, what is the perimeter of the floor? I'm also wondering how many baseboards are needed to go around the floor. So once we find out the perimeter, I wonder how many of these baseboards we will need for the contractor to be able to place them all around the floor. And one final question I have is, what is going to be the total cost of all the baseboards? So even once we figure out how many baseboards go all the way around, what's the total cost going to be? So here we have multiple questions that we are going to answer together. Are you ready to get started? Let's do it. So how long are the missing side lengths? Well, something that can help me figure this out is that I know in a rectangle, opposite sides are the same length. So I know across from the 18 would also be 18 feet. And across from the 14 would also be 14 feet. However, we do have an additional piece of information, and that is that there are doors on each of those sides that are 3 feet. So I'm going to take the 18 feet I normally would know across from the opposite side length, and then I'm going to take away those 3 feet for the door, and what I have left is 15 feet. And on the other side, we know that it would start at 14 feet. Opposite side lengths are equal. And then I'm going to take away 3 feet for the door. So 14 minus 3 equals 11 feet. So now I know the missing side lengths are 15 feet and 11 feet. Next, we want to think about perimeter of the floor. Because we heard the contractor is buying baseboards to go around the entire floor, I know that perimeter is the distance around a shape. So in order to find perimeter, we want to add the distance, all the different sides around a shape. So let's do that. Let's first figure it out. We can think about it, the perimeter with the doors, right? If we didn't need to think about the doors. So we would add the sides, 18 feet plus 14 feet plus 18 feet plus 14 feet. And so to do that, we could add 18 plus 14 twice. And to do that, we could add our 10s with our 10s and add our 1s with our 1s and put it together. So 10 plus 10 equals 20. 8 plus 4 equals 12. And then I can put those two partial add-ins together. 20 plus 12 equals 32. And then I can add 32 plus 32 to equal 64 feet. Also with math, something wonderful about math is that there are many different ways to find the answer. So what we could have also done was add all the 10s values for all 4 sides, and then add all of the 1s for all 4 sides, and then bring those all together. So it could be 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10 equals 40, and then we could add 8 plus 4 plus 8 plus 4 is 12 plus 12 equals 24, and add those together. 40 plus 24 equals 64. There are many different ways, or you could add your 8 plus your 8 and your 4 plus your 4 and bring it together. The wonderful thing about mathematics is there are so many different ways to find the solution, and that is one of my favorite things about mathematics. So the perimeter with the doors we know is going to be 64 feet. However, in thinking about the task, it asked about the baseboards, to place around the entire floor except for the doors. So what we need to do is we need to find the perimeter without the doors. So then what we would be adding is 18 plus 14 plus 15 plus 11. So to do that, we have already added 18 plus 14, and we know that that is 32. And then to add 15 plus 11, again, we could add our 10s plus our 10s. 10 plus 10 equals 20. And our 1s, 5 plus 1 equals 6. And then we can put those partial add-ins together. 20 plus 6 equals 26. And then we could add 32 plus 26. And to do that, again, we can add our 10s plus our 10s and our 1s plus our 1s and bring them together. So 30 plus 20 equals 50. 2 plus 6 equals 8, and bring those together. 50 plus 8 equals 58. So we now know that the perimeter without doors is 58 feet. It's important to remember those units. So we now know the perimeter without doors equals 58 feet. What we can now figure out is how many baseboards are needed to go around the floor. To do that, I can look in the task, in the activity, and see that each baseboard is 8 feet long. So what I'm now thinking to myself is, how many 8 feet long baseboards do we need for 58 feet? So let's think about different groups of 8. And then I can think about, I know 8 times 1 equals 8. Let's think of 8 times 2, 8 times 3. We can think about all the different numbers when we're multiplying by 8. And what gets us close to 58? Well, there are 2 that get close to 58, right? 8 times 7 equals 56. and 8 times 8 equals 64. So do I need 7 baseboards or do I need 8 baseboards? Well, if I had 7 baseboards that are each 8 feet long, that would get me 56 feet, which would not be enough to go around the entire floor without the doors. So that means I would then need 8 baseboards, which would then get me 64 feet of baseboards, and then I'll just have a little bit extra. So I now know that I would need 8 baseboards to cover the 58 feet. So now I can think to myself, I know that each baseboard that is 8 feet is $11. So I want to think about 8 groups of $11. Well, I know that 8 groups of 10, 8 times 10, when we think about equal groups, is going to be 80. And that can help me figure out 8 times 11. So 8 groups of 11 would just be another 8 past my 8 times 10. So if I know that 8 times 10 equals 80, then that helps me figure out 8 times 11 equals 88. So 8 baseboards times $11 for each baseboard, that's going to help me find the cost of the baseboards for the contractor to purchase and place around the entire floor, except for the doors. And then we're going to then add our units because we just solved that. So we now that 8 baseboards, we know that 8 baseboards times $11 for each baseboard is a total of $88 in baseboards that the contractor would need to purchase and place around the entire floor, except for the doors. Wow, 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 wow. I had such a great time reasoning and problem solving through this task together today. Thank you so much for joining. That is all for today's grade 4 lesson. Stay tuned for the grade 5 reasoning and problem solving coming up
Hello,
next.
everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Count on Us, Reasoning and Problem Solving. I am Coach Twitty, and today we are going to go over adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. Are you ready? Grab your paper and pencil, and let's get ready to start. All right, so here's our problem today. We're just going to take a moment to read it, and then we'll talk about the work that we need to do. Leah incorrectly added the fractions 2/3, 1/2, and 5/12. She said that to add fractions with different denominators, you use the common denominator and add the numerators. Leah's work is shown, and here's Leah's work. She has 2/3 plus 1/2 plus 5/12, and she found a common denominator, added the numerators, and came to the conclusion that the answer, or the sum, was 8/12. So the questions ask, what is Leah's mistake? And then find the correct value of 2/3 plus 1/2 plus 5/12. Show your work or explain your answer. So there's a couple of things that we need to do. First, let's talk about what is Leah's mistake. So Leah said that you find a common denominator and then you add the numerators. Well, I do think that you are supposed to find a common denominator, but what was the step? She did not find equivalent fractions once she determined the least common denominator. Very nice job. So once you determine the least common denominator, you would need to find equivalent fractions for the other fractions that you're adding and then go and add the numerators. Oh, you all are so smart. So let's see how we can help Leah. All right, so the next step in the problem is to find the correct value. So that's what we're going to work on now. Hopefully you have your pencil and paper. Coach Twitty is going to use her white space right here as her pencil and paper, as well as some of the virtual manipulatives that you've been using at home. First, we are going to determine the least common denominator. Next, we will create equivalent fractions. Then we will add the numerators. And lastly, we will simplify if needed. All right, I'm so excited. Do you have the problem written down? Let's go. So the first thing we need to do is determine the least common denominator. Our denominators are 12, we have 3, and we have 2. So Miss Twitty always likes to start with the largest, and let's say 12. Can that be our least common denominator? It could. Let's start with 12. Let's see if 2 and 3 also have it in common, and it's the least. So I'm going to start looking on my multiplication chart in my 2's column, and I see a 12. Okay. Let's see in my 3's column if I find a 12. I do. Is there anything else that could be my least common denominator between 2, 3, and 12? I noticed these 2 6s, but if I had my 12s, there would not be a 6, so that won't work. All right, good job. I think my least common denominator for 12, 3, and 2 would be 12. Very nice job. So let's go back to our problem. And I believe we can check that one off. We have determined the least common denominator. We said that was 12, so let's give ourselves a check. That's 12. Next up, we need to create equivalent fractions. And for this, we are going to use one of the manipulatives that you've used in school. I'm sure you're familiar with it from Brainy Camp, our fraction strips. Now, just to make sure that we're all clear and we can remember, let's go ahead and write our fractions. So we have, the problem is 2/3 plus 1/12, 1/2, 2/3 plus 1/2 plus 5/12. And we've determined that our least common denominator is 12. So we'll be working with 12ths. All right, so let's get started with 2/3. I'm going to bring over 2/3. And then to find equivalent fractions using the 12ths, I'm going to see how many 12ths would equal 2/3. You can do this at home if you want to draw something on a piece of paper, or if you want to log on to your Brainy Camp in Clever and do this as well. All right, there we go. So how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is 8/12. And let's just change the color a little bit here. So I have 8/12 plus, okay, now I'm going to use my halves. That's my half. So maybe Miss Twitty should move this over a little bit. I'll write it down here. I have 8/12 plus, now I'm going to do the same thing with my 1/2. I wonder how many 12ths will fit there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so in the equivalent fraction to 1/2 is 6/12. And I don't need to do anything to my 5/12, but I'm going to put it there because I think it just might help me in solving my answer. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now let's see. I know that my denominator is going to be 12ths because we determined that's our least common denominator. So how many 12ths do I have? 8/12 plus 6/12 plus 5/12. Now I'm just going to add the numerators. Well, 8 plus 6, well, I know 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 2 would be 14. And then 14 plus 5, well, I know 14 plus 6 would be 20, and 5 is one less than 6, so it would be 19. So I have 19/12. Wait, 19/12. 19/12. That is a fraction greater than 1. Oh my goodness, we talked about these in class. I know, it's so exciting when we find one. So the last step in doing our problem, remember, was to simplify if needed. So let's see if I take my whole, because we already said it was a fraction greater than 1 if the numerator is larger than the denominator. So if I add my 1 whole here, that would take away 12/12, and that would give me 1 whole. I would simplify this to 1 whole, and that would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7/12. So 19/12 is the same as or equivalent to 1 and 7/12. How did you do? Did you come up with similar answers? Oh, I hope you did. I know you're really, really, really smart. Hey, it was really great seeing you today. In 5th grade, we worked on adding fractions with unlike denominators. We look forward to seeing you next week. And remember, you can always count on us.
Hello and welcome to Count on Us. This is Coach Brenner, and over the next couple weeks, I'm going to be showing you guys a little bit of stuff about MCAP assessment. Do you remember that? I think you do. But the main thing is I'm going to be helping you as parents at home to help support your child. Students, this might be helpful as well. We're going to be looking at the MCAP website itself. We're going to be looking at some tools, how to access the practice tests, along with other little tips for test taking. Make sure all your materials are ready, since we know some of you guys are going to be taking this at home. Distance learning hasn't been the easiest on any of us over the last year, but hopefully this video will help, especially those 3rd graders who will be taking this assessment for the first time. I feel like they're a little bit more prepared than they would be if you weren't watching this. So parents and students, please take some notes, pay attention, make sure that you're listening, you're tuning in over the next couple weeks, because Coach Brenner is going to be here to help support you and make sure you and your child are ready when it comes to taking the MCAP assessment. So first, you're going to want to know how to access the MCAP website. You can type into your search bar MCAP, and it'll pop right up, or Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program. Or if you type right into your URL, you can type support.mdassessments.com. Again, you can type in support.mdassessments.com. And once you're there, it's going to take you right to this page. There are a bunch of tabs up here. You can peruse them and go through them at your own leisure at home. But the main thing you're going to want to get to is, one, make sure that your technology set up so that the computer at home can properly access TestNav, which is the site that your students will be going to take the MCAP. And the one that we're going to be looking at today, and this is just that beginning stage, is the test preparation. So when you click here, there's going to be a tab for tutorials, and this is something that you can go through. Just make sure that there's a TestNav tutorial. There's printable ones you don't necessarily need, but there's a lot of options here for you as a parent to make sure that you understand everything that your student has to do in order to be successful with taking the computer-based MCAP. So I'm going to go back to home. Once I go back to home, I'm going to go back to this test preparation. All right, I'm going to click that down button again. Now, I already clicked on tutorials. I'm going to click on practice tests. And this is something, as a parent, will allow you to see what your students have to be able to do in order to do well on this test, and at least be able to navigate through the test easily. especially those third graders, like I mentioned before. This is the first time they're taking this assessment. Fourth graders and fifth graders have taken it before, but they still need that practice and reminder of how to access. Now, when you're on here, all the different tests that your students will have to take, the English, language arts, your math, MISA for those fifth graders, social studies for middle school as well. So if you have other children, this is a website that they can all get on to practice. But since this is Count on Us and we know we're focusing on math, let's look at math. Now, all different grade levels. We have grade 3 all the way up to algebra 2. Let's look just at grade 3 to see how we can access this. So you're going to click right on grade 3. They give you two different columns, computer-based test along with paper-based test. We are going to look at the computer-based test. Now, one of the great things that you can also use at home is that there's a practice test answer key. This is a way that you can assess your children at home if the scoring isn't necessarily done right away. Now, the computer can score certain questions and let your child know at the end if it's correct, but some of those other questions where they're going to have to explain their answers and show their work, those are the ones that they're not going to be able to get scored online. Now here, we know that there is some different versions that we can have here. The TTS, what this stands for is text to speech. So if your child gets text to speech, they're allowed to do this. This is where the question will be read to them. But since this is that introduction, let's just take grade 3. We're going to click on it. It's going to take you right to this page. All right, so once you choose your grade level, and we clicked on grade 3, it's going to give you an overview of what your grade 3 or grade 4, grade 5 questions are going to be broken up into. So section 1, we can see that there's 12 questions. Section 2, there's 6. Section 3, there's 11. Section 4, there is 6 questions as well. So this is just an overview. Remember, this is a practice. This is not the exact test that your students will be taking. When your students are practicing at home, though, they can type in their name. I'll just type in Coach Brenner, and then we're going to get started. So once we're here, we see that this is a non-calculator section. So that means your students can't use a calculator. The calculator sections will actually provide the calculator on the screen for your students to use. So it's not necessarily they have to use something that's right in their hands, but they could use one at home if it's, or in school, if it's a calculator permitted section of the test. These are the directions that your teacher will read to your children. And what you would do is you would just hit start here. So here we know that we have different questions. We know that we're going to have 12 questions to maneuver from question to question. Remember, this is just our introduction. I just want you to be able to get onto the website, understand how to access it, and kind of just play around just to get used to it. So here, if we know that we're not sure of this question, one, we can just go to the next question here. Another tool that's up here, if you're not sure, you can just bookmark it. And when you bookmark it, that lets you know when you're finishing up your test, this is one of the questions that you would go back to. But to get to each question, you would hit just this next button. And as you can see, these are all fill in the blanks here. We're not going to get into particular types of questions. Here's a multiple choice. Here's another one where they have to type in different fractions. Here's a drop down. So students have to know how to drop down here. They would have to choose. All right. Their answers. And here, one of the things that students do have to know, especially those third graders, there's a little highlighting tool here. Some of these questions have more than one correct answer. If they only choose one, they cannot get points for it. If it says 2 correct answers, they have to choose the 2 correct ones. All right. So this is just that introduction we're going through just seeing the type of questions that your students will have to answer and something that they can do. Now, the practice test is the same for anybody that is visiting this website. So once you finish section 1, you can't log back in and get a different practice section 1. So really encourage your students to take their time when they're going through this, especially when they're getting that practice in, to make sure they understand how to do certain things. Now, one thing I do want to go through is one of the tools up here. All right, so our answer eliminator. So let's just look at this particular one, and this is going to help all students out, especially if they're not sure between just 2 of the particular answers, but they do know that certain ones are wrong. So it says which comparison is true. So this is a perfect one for this. So you click on answer eliminator. One, I'd like to see if they have the same denominators. I know it's a little bit easier for me. So it says which comparison is true. So here I know 3 is greater than 1, right? So 3 6 has to be greater than 1 6. So I'm going to eliminate this one. Also here, 4 is not greater than 5, right? The 5 is greater, so 4 8 is not greater than 5 8, so I can eliminate that one. Now these 2 questions, these 2 answers to this question have different denominators. Here it's giving me a 50-50 chance to get it right if I'm not 100% sure, just by eliminating these 2. So I'm going to come back to that answer eliminator in some of the future MCAT practice review Count on Us videos, but here I just wanted to introduce it on this last question. Thank you guys for tuning in for today's episode of Count on Us, where we went over how to access the MCAT website, try to maneuver around. We showed where the tutorial is, how to make sure your computer's up to date, along with getting into those practice tests. Now, in the future episodes where we are highlighting the MCAP assessment, we're going to actually dive into some of these test-taking tools, how we can help our students, our children at home. Just like the answer eliminator we looked at today, we're going to be going through different tools and different ways to make sure that we are prepared at home so that our children can do their best. Coach Brenner here. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day.
4 3 2 1